Hey friends, thanks for joining us on the Meaningless Podcast here, the podcast that asks, what is the time for everything? What is the time to be born? What is the time to die? What is the time to kill? And what is the time to heal? What is the time to love and the time to hate? I'm Pastor Tim here at Grace of God. I'll let my co-host introduce himself as well.
Hi, I'm Ian. I'm a parishioner at Grace of God.
And an accomplished theologian of the cross.
Yeah, not really. I mean, the whole thing is that you can't become one. You have to be made one. So, it always goes into that kind of passive reception as opposed to like our active things. But yeah, so we're going to be looking at chapter 3.
Chapter 3 of the book of Ecclesiastes.
Cool.
Anything that you want to remark on before we read?
Yeah, I kind of like this one too. I say I like them all. Obviously, I'm a Christian. I think I like the Bible. Or I should, at least. The first thing that really stood out to me was the patterns. There's this constant pattern in the first one that you kind of look at, the streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full, and it talks about the wind blowing all the different directions. So there's this constant cycle of nature that we go through. And then, it's kind of further, it's kind of talked about in the second chapter. But then here, we really get this kind of picture of how we kind of view the world, right? We view the world in these opposites, right? They're two distinct things. So, a time to kill and a time to heal, right? So, I think there's this constant, I want to say intertwining nature of all these things in creation that kind of come together. And that are really a part of each other, right? So I think a good one example is in this one, it's time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, right? Because this gives us a stone. So we're talking about one thing specifically, but we're seeing that two different times. There's two different times. So there's not always the same kind of usage for the stones, right? There's a time when you need them. There's a time when you need to discard them. So again, that kind of cyclical nature that one leads into the other, and then back into it.
Yeah,
it's kind of just
you used the
blew
word.
My mind.
You used the word cyclical there.
Yeah.
And as we were looking at, and we're kind of bouncing back and forth. We'll get into it in a moment. The opening verses of Ecclesiastes chapter 3, a well-known one too. I forget who the '80s rock group was that did the song "A Time to Be Born and a Time to Die."
Oh yeah, who's that? I don't remember.
They steal that. I think it's the Byrds.
Oh, okay.
But listener, somebody can correct us.
Yeah, you can call in on the hotline.
There you go. Yeah. Oh wow, if we got something like that going.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
But you used the word in there, a cyclical thing, right? That things kind of circle around. I often think of pendulums.
Oh.
Like the grandfather clock that swings back and forth. And Edgar Allan Poe there. One of the things that, if you read obsessively news analysis and news commentary, like a foolish guy like Tim here does.
Foolish guy like Ian as well.
There you go. In the last decade, that has been the subject of a lot. The way that people talk about shifts in society, shifts in culture, there's a lot of talk about that kind of emotion, a pendulum that swung really far one way, now swinging the other way, culturally, economically. Tell me then, and I think this would be a good point for us to get into it. Listeners, you tell me, doesn't the Bible capture so beautifully here, doesn't God depict for us through the words of Solomon here so beautifully this life that we live? Beautiful is an interesting word, maybe I should say, clearly. Right, what you're going to hear in God's word here, it captures the human experience in a profound and beautiful way that still, thousands of years later, people are using this as the basis of rock songs because it is just so poignantly said. Ian, you want to read this week? Should I read Ecclesiastes 3?
I read last week. I mean, if you want to read, that's fine.
I'll happily read. Sure. Let's go for it. Friends, we're reading Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Ian and I are reading from the New International Version. If you've got a different one at home, feel free to follow along in that.
All right, let's go.
There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What does the worker gain from his toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on men. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the hearts of men, yet they cannot fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for men than to be happy and do good while they live, that everyone may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all his toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it. Whatever is has already been, and whatever will be has been before, and God will call the past to account. And I saw something else under the sun. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there. In the place of justice, wickedness was there. I thought in my heart, God will bring to judgment both the righteous and the wicked, for there will be a time for every activity, a time for every deed. I also thought, as for men, God tests them so that they may see that they are like the animals. Man's fate is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath. Man has no advantage over the animal. Everything is meaningless. All go to the same place. All come from dust, and to dust all return. Who knows if the spirit of man rises upward and the spirit of the animal goes down into the earth? So I saw that there is nothing better for a man than to enjoy his work, because that is his lot. For who can bring him to see what will happen after him? That's Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And like I said before that, think about what we just read there, what you heard there in God's Word, and ask yourself, doesn't that capture life?
Yeah, I mean, I like your image of the pendulum because, if you think about these two things, they're kind of like two extremes. So like when you made the political kind of analogy there, that really kind of hit home for me, that I could see that, like the pendulum is constantly swinging back and forth, right? So if you want to take one example, a time to weep and a time to laugh, right? So a time for joy, a time for sorrow, which are two opposites of each other, right? But they're constantly kind of swinging back and forth. So I was kind of feeling like, if you're saying these are part of the human experience, and they definitely are, I would say that the general feeling that I get from this out of the human life is that we're kind of just stuck in that constant motion of swinging back between the extremes, and we live most of our life in that kind of middle, kind of flux position, where we're constantly going back between, like I said, weeping or laughing, or, time to tear and mend, right? When do you destroy something? When do you build it back? Yeah. So all these little things like that, I think pretty cool, kind of really jumped out at me with that image.
And yeah, thanks. I will say it's not original to me either. But the thing that I think about with the pendulum too, if you picture culture, politics, the world does that. It often swings on this pendulum in various dimensions, right? You almost have to think of a four-dimensional pendulum. But nothing is stable. Ecclesiastes 1, we did read about, there's always, there's nothing that's new under the sun. There's nothing that's brand new. There's always been, if you look at something that's happening in society or culture today, it happened before. Whatever you celebrate in culture has happened before. Whatever you bemoan in culture, that's happened before. And there's just nothing new under the sun. But it might be new in your life. And maybe society during your lifetime has never been at this particular point on the pendulum. You can be sure, though, that the world won't stay at this point. It will change. It will come back to this point again. It will also probably end up at a point that you would be more comfortable at another time, but you might not be around at that point of history. In that vein, I'm looking at verses 16, 17. Again, listener, you can ask yourself, do I feel like this happens? Solomon says, in the place of judgment, wickedness was there. In the place of justice, wickedness was there. So these two words that he uses here, judgment and justice, this is the idea that he looked at what we would call the justice system, the courts, the people who administered laws and doled out punishments and rewards according to people's conduct in this life. Solomon was the king. He was the one who appointed these people. And he noticed that people that he had appointed into these positions, the way that things were structured, wickedness entered in. Despite his own best attempts, despite his own desire to see something else, he wanted to see judgment and he wanted to see justice being done properly, but instead what he found was wickedness. Judgment there, I think, comes off to us as an automatically negative word, but it's not. We want good judgments to be handed down. Recently, for instance, Google was just in the news. They were considering whether they were going to break Google up or not, have them sell the Chrome browser, and instead they applied a more narrow judgment against Google and are going to have Google sharing some of their data. Maybe you wanted something different. Maybe this is exactly what you think is fair. Maybe you had absolutely no idea until you were listening to this. You're like, oh, I didn't know anything about this whole Google stuff.
Yeah, I didn't. I had no clue.
There you go. But we want things like that. We want the government to make good judgments about what is productive and beneficial for our society. And instead, Solomon saw wickedness. And there was no justice either. There was wickedness.
Now, you're talking about like 16. I think, kind of what I was looking at here too, at 17 kind of follows through. And he says, I thought in my heart, God will bring to judgment both the righteous and the wicked, right? So he judges everybody, not just one or the other. But here's where it really stuck with me, and this goes back to kind of the cyclical nature, and what I wanted to get into with this whole thing was God's sovereignty in all this, and in all the events, in creation, in all of creation. So he goes on.
Lay out that word sovereignty.
Sovereignty.
Just a little bit.
So basically, God is in control of everything, right? So since God made creation, all powerful, all knowing, he's behind everything, So we have this idea kind of like, I think a lot of people, and we were talking about theology of the cross, theology of glory last time, and I think this is kind of interesting because we usually think of when we think of God doing stuff, we think of the Old Testament, we think of the burning bush or the signs or, the angel coming down, Sodom and Gomorrah, maybe something like that. That's apparent, but, here, we're realizing that God works hidden through us, whether it's through our vocations, like we mentioned vocation last time.
Yeah, the idea that, just to lay that out again, the idea that we all have roles, and that's something that God gives us as a gift, so we can serve others, and so we can know, what should I do with my life to thank you, God? God's gift to me is my vocations. He says, here, this is easy enough, Tim. Figure it out. Be a dad, be a pastor.
Yeah. So what I was trying to get in here, he says, God will bring judgment to both the righteous and the wicked. But then the next part, is really where the meat of it is. For there will be a time for every activity and a time for every deed. So this is what I'm trying to get into. God, these are all God's doing. This whole paragraph, this whole poem almost.
The stuff about there's a
time to born, and it reminds me of, time to kill and a time to heal reminds me of Hannah's song. Right? The Lord kills, makes alive, he breaks down to Sheol, raises up. That whole idea, God's sovereignty, his absolute sovereignty. And he places all these things in our lives, right? Whether it's the time to weep or to laugh with joy, or even, the mundane middle stuff when we're in that pendulum swing kind of there too.
There's nothing exceptional happening. That's still just from God's hand.
Yeah. So, I think this is, again, I think really what we're getting into in the first few chapters here is that, even though he's saying it's meaningless, Solomon is really trying to drive home that God is sovereign and God is behind it, and God is the one that gives us meaning. And he appoints those moments in our lives, all of our lives, not just mine or yours, but and I think a good thing to do is look at this juxtaposition. You have a positive and a negative here too. So you got to remember these are all part of it. Sometimes God uses things like suffering to, whether it's a lesson or it's something we have to learn. I mean, these are all part of our lives, So I think that we have to kind of embrace the wholeness of it in order to kind of understand where, what he's trying to get here.
Yeah. I think that last thought there, we're just called to embrace what God puts in our lives. Verse 12, there's nothing better for men than than to be happy and do good while they live, that everyone may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all his toil. This is the gift of God.
Yeah.
Like that's,
Yeah.
I find.
He has made everything beautiful in its time.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
There's some interesting stuff. The last group of verses of this chapter, 18 onwards, says some interesting things that people get tripped up on, I think, ideas that sound like what's being said here. So I'm looking at verses 18, 19. God tests people so that they may see that they are like the animals. Man's fate is like the animal. Man has no advantage over the animal. So recently, and I don't know if you run into this kind of thing, Ian, I've run into a lot of people who, even one person I can particularly think of, who has this almost gut reaction against Christianity and even uses the word speciesist, in that he looks at Christianity and says, that it's fundamentally wrong that we believe that humans are something particularly special over against other living creatures. And I think if he was sitting here reading this portion where it says man has no advantage over the animal, he'd be like, see, Tim, even your Bible says what I feel, that humans are no different than animals. What is being said here?
Well, yeah, that's very kind of like a take that somebody like that would make, because they would look at it and just take it as like the literal words on the page and be like, oh yeah, look, I got you. See, I said, it says it right there. But as for men, God tests them so that they may see that they are like the animals.
There's a particular word there, like the animals.
Yeah, they not are the same as, are exactly as, is saying like. So there are similarities, and he talks right here. We're made from the dust, we're made from the earth. So we have that inexplicable intertwining, if you want to use that word again, connection to the earth.
We are fundamentally physical beings.
Yes.
Right? We are not like the angels in that sense, or God himself, where we are distinct from the physical matter of creation. We are part of this world. That's one. Yeah. What other ways are we like the animals?
Well, he says here, who knows if the spirit of man rises upward, and if the spirit of animal goes down into the earth. Now, my question here is the word
spirit there?
Spirit, like, are we talking about, because I'm assuming out of context that he talks about all have the same breath, man has no advantage over the animal.
Mm-hmm.
So saying that, not talking about spirit as in like maybe our soul, right? That like the human immortal soul that animals don't have,
right.
But more something like the spirit of life that God breathes into us, the breath of life. We share that same breath with animals. So in that aspect, in the physical aspect, we don't have much of an advantage over them.
Right.
Compared to what he's not saying here is that we have the spirit given from God.
Same as an animal.
But yeah,
right.
but like the soul is what separates us. You know what I'm saying?
And
in that last part.
The point that Solomon's making here, right? He asks these kind of rhetorical or hypothetical questions. He wants in this section to, the primary thing that's meant to come out of 18 onwards there at the end of chapter 3 is to say this: we are mortal. We die. Just like animals die. We don't have control to a large extent over when that's going to happen. One day, you, Ian, you listener, will die, just like animals die. And that's what Solomon says in the middle of it, latter half of 19, as one dies, so dies the other. And in that sense, we have no advantage over the animal. In that sense alone, that we also live at the pleasure of God, and our life ends according to God's will.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because that goes back to the sovereignty that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of that word in particular getting into this chapter, but you're right. That is an overarching theme here for chapter 3 is God rules.
Yeah.
He's sovereign.
And he rules because he rules.
Yeah. Well,
God rules, man. Wow. Yeah.
Let's dig into that thought a little bit. Couple of Lutherans sitting across the table from each other here. Where's the gospel in this? Where is good news for us as human creatures? in this section. Because it's a lot about we have no control over our lives, and there's also theologically what Lutherans are going to call law, where it talks about what we ought to do. There's a time for doing certain things. That God is going to judge actions. That He looks where there ought to be judgment, where there ought to be justice. He wants to see those things instead of wickedness. Where's the good news for us?
Yeah, it's actually right here, and it's so easy to find. It's like you just look up the word for gift of God, right? And there you go. It says, we're looking at 12 and 13. I know that there is nothing better for men than to be happy and do good while they live, that everyone may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all his toil. This is the gift of God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So this is cool, too, and I love the line after this because it really follows his back to the last two chapters where he's like, you'll never be remembered, generations pass, and everything goes, and it comes, and it has its time, and it fades, and it's born, and it dies again, and blah, blah, blah. And it says, I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken from it. God does it so that men will revere him. Right? So this is the thing. Again, it goes back to the whole thing. God's sovereignty. God is, in behind everything, in control of everything. And that's the thing that will last. That's the thing that's meaningful. That's the thing that will persevere, will be what's God's work are. So I think this is kind of an interesting thing because you mentioned we're Lutheran and we talk about we're really obsessed about staying as far as possible away from works righteousness. That sounds like, everybody else. I was going to say Catholics, but I mean, the American Protestants kind of the same works righteousness.
Again, and works righteousness. What do you mean there?
Sorry. I keep using all the technical jargon.
Let's introduce this stuff to people.
Yeah, no, works righteousness is basically so for the Lutheran position is that we are saved by faith in God, right? God gives us the gift of grace, and we receive faith, and that's, our salvation. Now, works righteousness kind of teaches that, you can earn your way to heaven, basically. If you do a lot of good deeds, you earn, bonus points in heaven, and if you have enough bonus points, you go to heaven and maybe not purgatory if you believe in that, or hell. So, basically here, as a Lutheran, you already won the game, You still have to play the game, but, we try to teach more a passive reception, even if we're doing good works, there could still be sins, even, because it's tainted by sin. So only that received righteousness of Christ is what makes us, kind of our works any kind of quote-unquote good.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a distinction that the Apostle Paul makes in the book of Romans, where he talks about what Romans chapters 1 and 2, Paul lays out what sin at its core is. It's this inborn fallenness where we indulge our own basest desires, and our desires are just wrong. There's a flaw.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, too, listener, if you're skeptical of the idea of original sin, but you've ever said something like, "Well, I'm just human," then you believe in original sin. Because
right?
If you're just human, if that's your explanation as to why you did something wrong, why you made a mistake, well, I'm just human, then I guess you're saying that there's something inherently wrong with people such that they can't be perfect.
Yeah. Well, you just called yourself a sinner. So.
Yeah, that is to
in
be
another way,
clear.
rose by another name.
Exactly. It's nothing other than one way of expressing. There are nuances that we would draw out further with the Christian doctrine of original sin, but to say anybody who says, "Oh, I'm human," as an explanation for why they erred or did something that they know they shouldn't have, then that's original sin. But let me bring that back around. Romans chapters 1 and 2, the Apostle Paul explains somewhat original sin and explains how original sin plays out in our lives in actions that we would call sinful, and lays out that God expects something different in the lives of human beings, that God expects instead righteousness, perfection. Then he tells us, although under God's law, we are all condemned. God's law is everywhere in the Bible where he speaks of our actions and shows us that we fall short of what he wants. Paul writes, but now, since Christ has come, a righteousness from God has been revealed. this righteousness is given by faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. That's what makes us, as Ian was pointing out, to be righteous is a status that you receive through faith in Jesus. God wants you to be righteous. He requires you to be righteous. And the Apostle Paul tells us, righteousness is given by faith to all who believe. It is a gift handed over. And in that gift, it operating underneath that bespeaking of righteousness over us, there's nothing better for us, as Ecclesiastes said here, to do than to eat and drink, to find satisfaction in our toil. God says you are righteous in his sight because of Jesus, his son. Go and do whatever it is that you are given to do in life, secure in that righteousness, secure in his love for you, and excited.
Yeah.
Excited about it.
Yeah, so I think maybe one thing we want to try to have people take away from this is that there is a place and a time and a purpose for everything, and God's behind it. So like, maybe even in my position, I got a new job coming up, and then I might have another offer. So I'm like, I'm in limbo. I don't know where I am. My mind's all over the place. But this is the thing. God is, no matter what position I take, God is going to put me where I need to be. Yep. Unless I go to Tarshish, get out, go down to Joppa and then book a trip to Tarshish. Then I'm not going to be in the place that I want to be because I'm going down and instead of going up. But that's kind of what we want to take away from a lot of this, is that we're trying to get across that, you have a purpose. You may not know what it is, but just look around you. Look at what you have every day. You wake up, what do you do if you have family, you have friends, you have a job, you have, social groups, whatever. Yeah. Those are all the places God put you. He put you and your family to do for his work, for a purpose. I think what greater honor is, or charge is that, than to, be tasked with God to just kind of go out in the world and be his representative, just loving people. It's pretty cool.
Can't get cooler than that. I was going to say, when you were talking about, the way that there are times, God doesn't constrain all the time, at least. There are times where God is plenty ready and will do so. Push us along a path, constrain us, that we, usually when we need to be taught to trust him, whether he's bringing us freshly to faith or working to increase our faith. But so much of our life, the Bible tells us, is freedom, that we get to operate in this beautiful freedom where we can pursue whatever our hands find with the gifts that God has given us. I can go to school and study different things. There's not just one plan that God has for me, where that's the only, if I decide to major in something else, God's mad about that. Yeah. If I decide to take this other job, God's mad about that.
He is God your father, but he's not like your earthly father who might get mad, say we were talking about Luther, that he is dad. The myth was that his dad got mad.
Because he wouldn't be a lawyer.
Yeah, but that actually wasn't true. There was something, maybe a tension between them. But from what I was reading, because I was just looking at the biography I've been reading over the past week or two, was that when he got taken in as a monk and he had the vows and everything, the celebration kind of part, his dad actually came with horses and food and all this stuff to kind of celebrate his son. Sometimes we go on paths that we don't even know.
Yeah. And that's a good one too, right? For the person who's too worried about, am I going down the right path? Am I taking the right job? Am I studying the right thing? As you just said, God will take care of us. He will bring benefit to it when we're acting in faith in him and love for neighbor. There's no reason that he won't shower his blessings on us.
Well, on that note, if you want to kind of wrap it up with this, just to stay on that and kind of encapsulate this and give the listeners maybe something to meditate on at the end of the thing, let's just take a look at number 11 here in chapter 3. Nice and simple. He has made everything beautiful in its time. That's it.
There it is.
He's put you in a place, and it's always going to have a time. So,
yeah. Friends.
I think it's something good to meditate on. And again, never forget, I always kind of come up with the last moment thing. And just eat and drink, enjoy your work, enjoy where you're put. Be like, hey, wow, God put me in this place. Like, I think we talked about last time about Jeremiah, like, where he's like, you know, before I made you in the womb, like, here's God already planned this out. I think that's pretty meaningful for me, that God thought about me, like little old me. I can't do anything on my own, you know. How many times, you know, nobody's perfect or anything, like we were saying. God thought about me, he thought about you, thought about pastor. He said you were going to be a pastor one day.
Yeah, he knew that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what he was thinking, but
neither do I.
Yeah, right. But that's the thing, you know. He has also set eternity into men's hearts who cannot fathom what God has done from the beginning to the end.
That's an important verse, and I think that's one where we could punch it for the day, to say that God has set eternity in your heart, is what that verse says. That you're yearning for fulfillment and to see something that you do lasting. It's something that God put in your heart. And you just have to go after that with the knowledge that we can't see eternity. The things that God has done from beginning of beginnings to end of ends, only God knows.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, Solomon says right here, right at the end of 14, he gives you the kind of answer to that. He says, I know that everything God does will endure forever. Yeah. So do it in love for the neighbor, do it for God. You know, if you're doing it together, the things that God does through you are the things that will last forever.
He will make sure that what needs to last will last. Yeah. That's your faithful God, friends.
And your perfect example is right here, the Holy Scriptures.
Bible.
All right.
Very good.
Until next time, I hope you enjoyed this. And, you know, I hope that some people would like maybe leave a comment or send an email if you're interested. You know, just interested about us or about the church. Because, you know, the whole point is kind of getting out the word to people, helping them understand. Maybe you get a new vocabulary word, like we did works righteousness, we did sovereignty, things that you like. And just get people to kind of think and meditate on these things. And then hopefully it brings you closer to Christ.
Yeah. Whatever podcasting platform you might be listening on, friends, I'm sure there's probably a comment interface. I don't always know how to see comments that people might make on those, though. So if you really want to get in touch with us, send an email to meaningless@graceofgod.church. Yep. Meaningless, just like our podcast here, just like the beginning of Ecclesiastes, meaningless @graceofgod.church. That's how you can get in touch with us. Leave us any thoughts, comments about what you've been listening to. God bless you, friends.
Peace and grace be with you.